Ranking systems enhance games when they make you play better. And one of the best examples of this is Sonic Adventure 2. SA2 is often remembered as one of the most beloved Sonic games, but part of what made it so replayable was its ranking system. It didn't just care if you finished a level, it cared about how you finished a level. Let's look at the very first stage, City Escape. If you played this level casually for the first time, you'll probably earn somewhere between an E and C rank, maybe B if things go well. And that might feel strange at first. Isn't this just a platformer? Don't you just go from point A to B? Well, yes, but SA2 rewards you on how you move through that space. Your rank is based on a combination of ranks collected, completion time, and most importantly, style. And I'd say style is the heart of SA2's identity, especially in the Sonic and Shadow stages. You earn points for things like taking skill-based shortcuts, hitting trick ramps cleanly, maintaining grind rails without falling, and chaining enemy homing attacks without touching the ground. Now, most of this is not required to beat a level in this game. A lot of it, if not all of it sometimes, is required if you want that A rank, and that's the key difference. SA2's ranking system doesn't punish you for playing casually, it shows you what's possible when you improve. To earn higher ranks, you have to learn the physics, understand enemy placement, experiment with the routes, and replay levels with intention. The ranking system quietly teaches mastery. It turns a straightforward level into a playground for expression and optimization. And that's what a great ranking system does. It takes a game you already enjoy and gives you reason to dig deeper into it. Now, we've talked a good bit about Sonic Adventure 2 so far, and that's for very good reason. And not only just because of this is what makes a good ranking system, but I think this game also demonstrates the other half that is pretty important that I think most games don't actually do. And I'm going to use this as an example. The level Metal Harbor. In Metal Harbor, later in the stage, there's a countdown to grab onto a rocket ship that's about to blast off. And if you don't make it, you fail and have to restart your last checkpoint. But there's actually another part of the rocket that you can grab onto, and it's a bit higher up, and you have to go out of your way to get to it, and it's not very obvious to most players who see a countdown timer and are just trying to hurry and grab the first handle. But if you're good enough, you can aim for the top part of the rocket by taking a different pathway, and grabbing onto this part of the rocket will net you more score towards your rank and give you the extreme tagline displayed on the left side of the screen. This requires game knowledge and dexterity to pull this off, and it's extremely satisfying. But that's a big reason why I cited SA2 as one of the best, because it takes full advantage of its ranking system more than most games I have played, including action and combat games. That example right there, that specific route is made purely just to get higher score and add to the ranking system. And it serves really no other purpose other than it just being a test of your skill. There's not a lot of examples in gaming where they have a harder route or harder way for you to do things to earn more points, or something that adds directly into the game's ranking system. And that's why I think, again, it just takes full advantage of it. This game yearns, do it for the style, do it for the sauce, do it for the fun. But what happens when a game's ranking system doesn't actually encourage that? So let's break this down. I believe there are two categories of bad ranking systems: participation trophies and just systems that are not well thought out. Or for the sake of this video, we're going to use the term lackluster. This may come out of left field, but one ranking system that follows the letter grade format that I feel is lackluster is a game that I actually like quite a bit, and it's Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. This game can be quite divisive, but not in your traditional sense. And not to get too deep into it, but this game had a pretty troubled development history by Konami. It's pretty bad with how it went. Some would claim that MGS5 is an unfinished game because there's lots of cut content. Again, this is due to the development history of the game, and that's a big reason why it's divisive. However though, it's a very, very fun game to play. It's very, very freeform as well for its time, and it received raving reviews despite its shortcomings with the story, pacing, and cut content. But due to it just having extremely superb gameplay, a lot of people consider it the best game to play in the series. And trust me, if you want to check this one out, you're going to be mostly playing the game. There is not much story, which is very odd for Metal Gear. But before we get into the ranking system, let me explain how this game works a little bit. It's a very simple premise. You gear up from your base, pick your mission, and goof off on the helicopter ride, of course. Like, who doesn't do that? And then get started with whatever it is you need to do for your mission. And there's various sorts of missions in this game, but today we're going to focus on a simple kill mission. My mission is to take out this target, simple as that, right? However, this is a stealth game at the end of the day, so you'd think, okay, so try not to get caught and take out this NPC, I guess. Sounds pretty easy to get an S rank. You'd be very wrong on how that actually works. And in which, I will say in its defense, this game has so many freaking options for how you want to play. So like, I kind of get it, it's very freeform. You can literally troll NPCs by throwing decoys at them.
You're pretty good, you're pretty good. Kept you waiting, huh?
You can also literally choose almost anything from the armory that you have. Any weapons, gadgets, anything to do the mission almost however you'd like to do it. Now, you can quite literally shoot a rocket fist at enemies, and you could just aim it at your target if you really wanted to in this game. And we're not there yet, but if you're starting to see the problem, yeah, you get where this is going, why a ranking system is not the greatest in this game. And the question is, how do we balance a ranking system around this? If your answer was you don't, congratulations. You are correct, because I'm going to tell you how they did this. Where this ranking system fails and falls flat is that it's mostly based on how fast you complete said mission and not necessarily how you completed a mission. Okay, I'm going to be real with you guys for a minute. That's not the whole truth. There is another way to get an S rank in this game, and it revolves around stealth, which you would think, yay, this is a stealth game, cool. We can get S ranks by doing stealth. Well, there's a little bit more to that. And so the stealth specific system for getting an S rank is called no traces. Basically, it will grant you an automatic S rank if you do all of these things. Never be spotted or use reflex, which is when you get caught, you have a quick chance to react and take them out. Never touch anyone, even bumping or diving into enemies counts. Never use CQC, which is close quarters combat. Never fire a weapon, throw a grenade, plant a mine, throw magazines from guns, or even shooting the water gun. Yes, I said the water gun. But sounds cool, right? Well, not really, because both play styles get overcompensated for. Being totally stealthy with no trace is an automatic S rank, like I said. Granted, probably not the easiest thing in the world, but it's also kind of dumb. And the reason for that is because if you want an S rank and still be crazy, all it takes is just completing the mission as fast as possible. And it doesn't matter how you do it, doesn't matter what you use to do it, as long as it's completed as fast as possible, you could still get an S rank. So it's both easy and hard at the same time, and it doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't feel balanced for the game. It doesn't feel rewarding. Also, another big problem, no trace is not even possible on every single mission. And that really brings down the ranking system, because it shows a lot of accolades on the screen when you complete a mission as if it means anything. It shows enemy combat alerts, hits taken, tactical takedowns, headshots, accuracy, neutralizations, markings, effective interrogations, and prisoners rescued. But yet, time trumps all of that. None of that matters. A ranking system that only focuses on time is not a bad ranking system. However, if it wants to do that, that needs to be the only metric to focus on. This game has so much stuff in it. There's so many cool ways to balance a ranking system, I think, around all the cool stuff you can do in this game. There's a clear middle ground that could be reached for both stealth and just utilizing all of your tools to increase your score and have the other stuff that you do actually matter outside of time. And that's what I call a lackluster ranking system, because it's not necessarily offensive, it's just kind of pointless. And to be clear, I'm not trashing on MGS5, I love this game, but the ranking system isn't make or break for how good this game is. It just doesn't enhance it like how SA2's ranking system enhances that game. This is actually the overall problem I think some systems have. In some games, they just don't add anything to the game, or they just make things more annoying when not done right or have much thought put into it. So on the flip side of things, we have my favorite, Participation Trophy. This kind of ranking system is one that is designed to not truly add anything to your game, similar to lackluster ranking systems. However, this one is a bit different because you don't have to put much effort into it. And honestly, the biggest game I can think of is Sonic Generations. Yes, we are returning back to Sonic, but it is just for a moment because honestly, Sonic Generations is the game that has the biggest participation trophy ranks I've ever seen before. It hands them out so easily, you just have to essentially not die in any level and not take forever to complete a level, which for the average gamer is not very hard to do. Here's how it actually works under the hood. Your score is calculated based on your clear time and how many rings you collected. Every ring is worth 10 points and the ring score maxes out at 5,000. But here's the thing. Those factors alone can only ever get you between an A and D rank. Now on paper, that doesn't sound too bad. However, it's not hard to rack up that much score. So the only other win condition to get an S rank is to finish the stage without losing a single life, which awards you a perfect clear bonus that bumps you up by a single rank. So essentially, Generations boils down to go forward, don't die, get some rings. That's it. And some levels that may be a little harder than others, but most levels in Sonic Generations is very easy to S rank. The Sonic community noticed this really quick when the game came out, and people were legit asking how you get a bad rank in this game. And you know what, maybe it's not so fair comparing this to like SA2, so instead let's compare it to the game with the exact same gameplay style, Sonic Unleashed. Now on the surface, these two games look nearly identical. Both are boost 3D style Sonic games with daytime stages. Both give you a letter grade when you cross the finish line, but under the hood, the ranking systems work quite differently. Sonic Unleashed calculates your final level score based on multiple factors: time, rings, and enemies defeated, and your QTE accuracy, which are things that Generations does not have. It is fair to say that Unleashed is one of the more punishing Sonic games overall, but I think difficulty and ranking systems go hand in hand. Being good at Unleashed takes some real skill, and the ranking system reflects that and pushes you to be better. We don't want no participation trophies, we want to earn our bragging right. If it's fair, of course. But I was very curious, and I browsed some threads online about them, and a lot of people don't actually like the letter system because they claim it makes them feel bad for their performance. Something also interesting is I couldn't find anyone mentioning Sonic or any other platformer that may have a letter grade ranking system in these kinds of threads. Obviously Sonic is a very popular franchise, but there's a lot of other games that do this kind of stuff. But there's one thing that these games all had in common that a lot of people were discussing, and they were action games, as in like combat action games. So that got me thinking, are action focused and combat games just worse at grading the player for being good at their games? My answer to that is probably going to have to be no. I think action games, specifically character action games, have some of the coolest uses of a ranking system. It's all purely based on the combat and it focuses on one specific area, and that area just happens to be the main part of the game. One thing to not misconstrued from this video is I'm not saying a ranking system needs to have every part of the game measurable, but more so it needs to have focus and make that part that it wants to measure make you play better. And I think that's exactly what most action games do that have good combat and have a good ranking system. The game that we're going to highlight here is something that most of you probably wouldn't expect. Final Fantasy XVI, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really love this game. It's mostly because of how it flows. It's the story and the gameplay outside of combat are the things I don't really care for. But the combat itself is pretty awesome with the things that you can pull off. A big reason it feels so good is that the battle director from Devil May Cry has led this game's battle direction, and it really does show. However, there's one big issue. On first playthrough, the game is not particularly challenging and the enemy design isn't the greatest. So there just isn't much reason to engage with the combat in a unique and fun way, which kind of makes it feel like wasted potential. Except in one mode, arcade mode. And an arcade mode mission unlocks after each story beat and acts as a mission select, letting you replay specific moments throughout the game. But there's one huge added benefit that makes me enjoy the gameplay way more, and it's the classic ranking system returns in arcade mode. Replaying these segments becomes significantly more fun because the game asks you to play better, use as many mechanics as possible, and do it with style to earn a rank. The way it works is interesting though. Each arcade mission is broken up into legs, and you earn a cumulative rank for each major fight or segment. And then by the end, you get an overall final ranking. There are two things the game is measuring though: how complex your battle techniques are and how well you executed them. Complexity shows up as the color of your grade, with the rainbow being the best, and execution shows up as the stars on the right side of the screen as you're doing battle techniques. Those two factors multiply together to build your score leg by leg until you hit the final rank. But here's where it gets a little brutal. If you die once, your score just gets wiped and you have to come back prepared next time. Overall, I just find myself doing the craziest things possible with so many particle effects on screen in arcade mode. It's such a great excuse to use all of the combat tools, and even Torgal. Torgal is amazing for helping with combos and keeping enemies in the air or just keeping them stunned. I bet you, if you played 16 and only played through it once, you probably didn't use Torgal and time it correctly to get the unique timing, or what they call in the game, perfect sick. But messing around in the arcade mode and the training mode, you can find out how the combat really works. But again, this is a great mode, but only in isolation, because there's basically no rewards besides bragging rights and improving your skill for fun. And none of that matters in the main game because there's no ranking system or scoring system. It's exclusive to arcade mode. I bet so many of you that have played this game didn't really get to explore the combat because there's just not really much reason to, but arcade mode gives you a reason. Also gives you a reason to boot up that training mode, do some combos, and figure out some optimal setups that you can do to get through arcade mode better. And I'm using this game as an example just because I simply found myself enjoying the combat and gameplay way more when I felt like I had to work for something instead of just mashing buttons to win. And this game directly shows how much a good ranking system can change the game. And it's funny because I don't have to use another game example against this because it's literally in the game. Most of the game does not have a ranking system, and then the one part that does is awesome. Alright, you get the point. FF16 is awesome when the ranking system is included. It makes you try to earn something, we get that. But what if you take that leg system and that ranking system, but just make it present throughout every section of the game? Well, you get Metal Gear Rising. There's no better way to describe Metal Gear Rising Revengeance other than it's awesome. This game is just pure sauce and aura. I love how it plays, the ridiculous things that you can do, and just the overall style of the game. The only thing I don't like is the story. As a Metal Gear Solid fan, I think it's pretty abysmal. And yes, I know the game gets memed on, and I still hate it, and the fact that it takes place after MGS4 leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But honestly, none of that truly matters because this game is really fun to play, and the gameplay is immaculate, the music is incredible, and everything is just dialed up to 11 and it's over the top. So obviously, it's a character action game like a DMC or FF16, however it's made by Platinum Games, who are also well known for Bayonetta. It also plays a little differently than most games in this genre because defensive options are actually pretty limited. So you're encouraged to focus on offense in MGR, and there's no true dodge button, and while you do have a parry, it's probably one of the easiest parries I've ever seen. Don't be fooled though, you can still get cooked in this game. So that leg system I mentioned earlier is present throughout the entire game. Every major enemy, boss, or group fight section gives you a rank at the end, and what makes this ranking system more unique than FF16 or SA2 is that you actually get useful rewards for engaging with it. There's a point system called Battle Points. You earn BP by defeating enemies and using the game's signature gimmick, Zenitsu, which by the way directly means cut in Japanese. And if you couldn't tell from the gameplay footage, it's literally the freeform blade cut mode where you just go crazy. And you control it with the right analog stick, and you literally just slice enemies and even objects into like a million pieces. And literally a million pieces. I have no idea how they pulled this off on the PS3, but it's a very impressive mechanic, and the game constantly pushes you to use it, and it ties directly into the ranking system. Man, I just love it when they make unique mechanics just to make things cooler and have it add into a ranking system. I feel like that feeds me directly. But anyways, those battle points let you buy upgrades for your weapons and for Raiden, so pushing your gameplay further, and as a result, earning higher ranks directly rewards you in this game. And I'm not typically someone who thinks you need a candy on a stick approach for rewards and to motivate players to get better, but if it helps more people reach that point, I think it's a great addition and will appeal to a wider audience and get them to be better at the game. But if it isn't obvious to you by now, these kinds of games, they need to be good games with strong combat, I think, for any of this to work and for us to even care as the player. If the gameplay is bad, or if the combat is lackluster, a ranking system can't really do the heavy lifting and give this game any favors. Sometimes it can make a game more fun like FF16, but in MGR, it's more like the cherry on top, and the reward system really pushes that further and makes you want to play your best. So we've talked about how FF16 shows how a ranking system can make a good game more fun, and how MGR can be pushed even further when you have rewards that come from said ranking system. Well, where did any of this come from? What was the origin point of this ranking system, and what game does it the best out of action games? And it would have to be DMC or Devil May Cry. This is the game that basically invented the template that everyone else is working from. The letter grades, the style scoring, the idea of how you fight matters just as much as whether you win or not. That's DMC's DNA. And DMC 5 is probably the clearest example of this formula fully realized. What makes it different from everything we've talked about is that the ranking system isn't a mode, it isn't tied to just getting rewards, it's just always there. Every fight, the style meter is always live in your face the entire time. And it's grading you in real time, not at just the end of a leg or end of a group fight. You can watch yourself in real time go from D to C to B mid-combo, and you can feel it. There's a shame to letting it drop, and there's also a rush to pushing it higher, and this creates a constant feedback loop that every other game can only gesture at, and this one fully realizes. It has the best visual flair of making it feel cool due to the naming conventions of the ranks. And on top of that, you still get a rank at the end of the mission. The other thing that DMC5 does that's pretty unique is the game is built completely around the ranking systems. So repetition actually makes your rank not go much higher or go down when you start spamming a move over and over. So if you want a good rank, variety isn't just rewarded, it's basically required. You want to mix and match all of the different tools and options that you have in the game to create cool combos to make that ranking system go higher, and the game is basically telling you, hey, please do everything you can to do the coolest combo possible. The ranking system and the combat are inseparable in a way that FF16 never quite gets to be. That's the difference between a game that has a ranking system and a game that is designed from the ground up around one. And I didn't touch too much on DMC because it's the obvious choice for a video like this. But instead, I found talking about its offspring a bit more interesting before we got to this point, and what else is there really to say about DMC that hasn't been said? DMC is the golden child for action games just because of how stylish and crazy it can get. All the different crazy combos you can do, you'd think you'd be playing Marvel vs. Capcom 3 right now. Well, Dante and Virgil are in that game, so I guess that also makes sense. And so many people have gone over the intricacies of this game and how it plays, I didn't really have much to put on the table for this. And also, I'm just a bit more experienced in a lot of other action games, and DMC is something I would not say I'm the best at, but I definitely do understand the ranking system, and I think it's one of the coolest ones yet. And once again, it's the origin point, it's the father of the stylish action game ranking system. Alright, we've discussed a lot about ranking systems in games that use a letter grade format, but plenty of games don't use letter grades at all, or they just judge the player using a different and sometimes unconventional approach. And even when some of these games do use letters, they may handle it in some unusual ways, at least depending on how the game fundamentally works. There's a few games that I really want to highlight here, but first let's start with my current favorite, Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush blew me away when it came out in 2023. It was a shadow drop by Microsoft, and it specifically came from Tango Gameworks, which Microsoft shut down not long after this game released, by the way, but we're just gonna ignore that part because this would turn into a different video. The best way to describe it is it's a pseudo rhythm game that plays like an action game in a similar vein to DMC. There's so much to gush about when it comes to Hi-Fi Rush's gameplay. It's so snappy and fun, there are so many cool combos and abilities, the soundtrack is awesome, it's a mix of licensed and original music, and of course it has a really cool ranking system. The ranking system / style meter stays on the screen the whole time just like DMC, and you get a ranking for your performance at the end. Although here's what's a little different about it. Remember, I said it's a rhythm game as well, so attacking on the beat gives you a damage buff and directly feeds into the ranking system. Doing QTEs properly and even doing dashes on the ground or in the air on beat increases your score for the ranking system as well. And it's very interesting how it flips the DMC style meter on its head to support this hybrid gameplay system. I think it makes it a very unique game to play in general, and it was truly awesome to see how the ranking system lines up with the actual game. It's not afraid to say, hey, I'm both genres. It's just a bit unconventional because rhythm games typically have a ranking system, however, they're very straightforward. You hit the beats on time, well, congratulations, here's your score and here's your rank. So adding this into an action game is actually really different, and I haven't really seen anything like this before Hi-Fi Rush. And not only that, Tango Gameworks took this ranking system a step further on higher difficulties. The timing windows for everything get tighter, and then there's the next step up above that difficulty, which is called Rhythm Master, where you have to stay on beat or it's game over if you drop to a D rank at any point in the level, you're cooked. And man, I love this game. I'm just happy I finally get to be able to talk about it in a video, so I had to squeeze this one in there. Well, let's move on to some other unconventional ranking systems. Sonic Riders is one of my all-time favorite Sonic racing games, and just racing games, period. To me, this is like the Super Smash Bros. Melee of racing games. There's so much tech in this game, I legit don't have time to go over it all because it would pad out this video. But Sonic Riders doesn't have a usual ranking system. It's purely tied to tricks. Every time you hit a ramp or catch turbulence from another racer, you get launched into the air, and that's your window. After that, you want to chain as many trick actions as you can before you land, and the game grades you on the spot. This can get you anywhere from a C all the way up to AA, S, SS, and even X rank if you're really cooking. But here's the catch. If you stick the landing wrong, like if you're still mid-trick when you hit the ground, it doesn't matter how many tricks you chain, that's an automatic C rank, so the execution has to be clean from start to finish. And the reason this actually matters beyond just looking cool is air. Air is basically the fuel system in Sonic Riders, and it powers your board, your boost, your everything. So higher trick ranks give you more air, which means better tricks directly translate to a competitive advantage on the track, so it's not just a cosmetic thing, it's a core pillar to how you race. So what makes this pretty unconventional is that the ranking system isn't evaluating a level or a fight that's happening in the game, instead it's these small moments throughout a race over and over. You're constantly being graded mid-competition, and the better you get at it, the faster you go. So the skill ceiling and ranking system are completely tied together in a way that feels totally unique to this game. In a way, you could say it's like DMC a little bit, however, this is a racing game and it's only tied to tricks, and not combat, because there isn't really much combat in Sonic Riders outside of hitting the boost button, and then you hit your opponent if they're nearby. But what I really enjoy is that the ranking system acts like a visual guide directly to the player to show you, hey, you could be getting the best tricks possible, but you're just hitting an A rank, but you could be hitting an X, so do a better trick next time. And it helps you optimize your play. I think it's a really cool and different use of the ranking system. So this one's kind of random, and I get that this is the random section, but this might surpass random. But Star Fox, specifically the Star Fox 64 remake on Switch 2. It launched around the time I'm writing this, and yes, it launched around the time I'm writing this because Star Fox games are famously that short, and I was able to do 3 runs already and still tackle this topic. The game is built around replayability, so it works in its favor because there's multiple branching paths to give you different cutscenes and levels, and can even affect which guest characters join you on missions. Star Fox's ranking system, though, is basically challenge completion. There's no letter grade or star rating, you're just meeting the criteria that the game sets. And in Star Fox's case, that usually means hitting a certain number of enemies in a stage. Each level has its own threshold, often alongside other requirements like keeping your companions alive. Meet those conditions and you earn a medal for the stage, basically proof that you're goated at Star Fox. What's interesting though is that while it does push you to play better, there's reasons to not chase it immediately because of the branching pathways. For some of them, you may need to hit or intentionally miss specific conditions that conflict with the medal requirements. So if you want to see every planet in the game, getting a medal isn't really the best thing to go for. For example, one route condition is literally letting Slippy die, which would prevent you from earning that medal. So I'd treat this ranking system as a very specific goal to pursue on replays, but it undeniably makes you play better at the game and encourages you to shoot as much stuff as possible. You can kind of treat it how, like we talked about Final Fantasy 16 having a separate ranking system mode for all of the levels in the game. You can kind of say that here, although it's already included in the main game. But again, if you want to see what the game has to offer, going for that isn't necessarily always optimal. But I thought it was quite an interesting example, which is why I wanted to include it in this video. So we've covered a lot of ground. We went from Sonic Adventure 2 teaching you how to move through a level with intention to MGS5 showing us what happens when a ranking system forgets what it's supposed to be. And then from DMC5 inventing a template that half of the industry has borrowed from. And then to Sonic Riders grading you in micro moments mid-race that directly affects whether you win or lose. And through it all, one thing stayed consistent. The best ranking systems aren't really about the grade. They're about that moment right before you try again, when you know exactly what you did wrong, and you know you can do it better. That's the game respecting you enough to ask more of you. That's what separates a ranking system that means something from one that's just here for decoration. Because at the end of the day, nobody really remembers the C rank. They remember the run where everything clicked, where the tricks were clean, the combo never dropped, and the landing was perfect. And then the game looked at you and said, yeah, that was an S rank. But not just because you did the bare minimum, but because you did more as the player, and the game rewarded you for that. And if a game can make you feel that, I'd say it did its job.